Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting ready for Game 2 between 100 Thieves Academy and TSM Academy. If you missed the first game, TSM Academy had a pretty dominating ending. Now, to be fair, though, as we're going to see the first replay, 100 Thieves Academy did start off pretty well, and the first 5-6 minutes of the game actually seemed to look like we were going to get a 100 Thieves Academy win.
It looked really good, and we said that there's going to be a bit of an arms race, right, between the top and bottom side of the map, and it looked pretty good to start off from 100 Thieves. They were definitely winning the arms race, but I feel like there are two plays that we can point to where things go badly, and this is the first one where they just get caught out. It takes them too long to actually capitalize on this extended dive, and they just get collapsed upon by all of the skirmishing power from TSM. And then the other one, as I'm sure we're about to see, is next to the Rift Herald, where they stack up all on top of each other. They can't establish battle lines whatsoever, and TSM are just able to win with one fell swoop, hitting all 5 members there with the Moonfall from Hyper.
And even the attract to repel combo as well. And it's not the Nocturne Rel that we saw the LCS squad use, but Diana Rel, not too bad and shabby of a different combo as well. And even in this fight as well, the way that TSM Academy, specifically Hauntzer, played this extremely well. He knew how far ahead he was on the Renekton, that he could single-handedly zone out the backline of 100 Thieves Academy by himself. And even if he went down in efforts for it as well, that's fine, because TSM Academy were always winning the other side of the fight.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting, though, that there are some gaps in the armor of TSM right now, right? We saw some very strong play coming through. They were good at picking their fights pretty consistently. But, you know, we saw it here, and we'll see it in another replay coming up. Hyper is not pressing his Zhonya's when he's pressing his R button on the Diana, right? We're seeing that TSM are doing a fantastic job at getting a lot of their waves set up so that they can go for these fights, but then these fights aren't quite as coordinated. And as I said in the game, TSM Academy, if they were even, if they hadn't gotten those big wins earlier on in the game, these fights would oftentimes not be winning for them. So 100 Thieves can try and just shore up that early game, make sure they don't fall nearly as far behind. And then I feel like, in general, they actually did a good job at setting up their battle lines. They were just too far behind to make it work. Right.
And 100 Thieves Academy, we have to remind ourselves, is that it seems like they were going to go for a pretty standard way of the game, but because of how certain things panned out from level 1, they made great adaptations. They pushed out Hyper of the jungle, and they set themselves up for what seemed like it was going to be a very successful early game. We don't need to see this. This was... You know, teleporting right into Rel doesn't seem like the best play, but you know, they're 14,000 gold down. At that point, 100 Thieves, you're ready to just flip it, and it's like, all right, let's see if this happens. If it doesn't, the game finally ends, and we just go on to game 2. And you mentioned near the end of game 1 before we went to break, Josh, is that the way that things played out, it really just came down to fumbling execution and just rushing and skipping over steps. Because 100 Thieves Academy are going to red side again, we potentially might just see a salty run back, or at least similar compositions from these guys.
Oh, sorry, I got something just like randomly playing in my ears from somewhere else entirely. I thought that was coming out on stream, but don't worry, you guys are all safe at this point. I think it is going to be something very similar to what we saw in the first game. I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sure you saw my face. It's like, what was that? What am I listening to?
And now, was it the song that you sent me, or was it the song that I sent you?
No, it was the clip that Sean sent me.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Shout out to Sean Atonin.
That's my voice.
Yeah. he clipped a moment during the last cast. It was
just like the simulations, man.
Yep, just like the simulation. You know, moving forward into the second draft, Josh, if there are any adaptations, you know, what would we expect 100 Thieves Academy? As we brought up before near the end of the game, Diana is actually Hyper's most played champion during the summer split. 10 games so far. Who cares about the win rate? Because Hyper just got a pretty damn good win on it. Yeah, he probably needs to press the Zhonya's and a couple of those other ones, but they still got the dub, and that's all that matters. And does that mean that it warrants a ban from 100 Thieves Academy?
I'm not sure that it does, right? Even though we saw that where some big plays coming out from Hyper, I set him pretty far behind originally, right?
Yeah.
It's something that I feel like they've shown that they can control if they're able to play their plans a little bit better. I feel like the thing that made their draft really difficult was actually giving the Irelia over. And even though Takeover wasn't nearly as strong as he might have otherwise been in previous games, it's a situation where it gave them a lot of flexibility in their draft. It pushed out some of the things that we know Gamsu likes to play. And if it comes through again, it might be a situation that it becomes very difficult for 100 Thieves Academy to draft their solo lanes. But they seem to be more in line with you. They don't want that Diana to come out whatsoever. And so we are going to get at least one change through our Salty Run back.
Hey, sometimes, you know, it's not necessarily about if a champion on paper is that strong. You know what? But this changes up everything, because now things like the LeBlanc and the Jace are up on the table. I think most notably the LeBlanc is what if you are a 100 Thieves fan and looking at, okay, what do we not want to give Takeover? It was the LeBlanc. Well, I mean, the Aurelia can't go through Ivor, so now the LeBlanc comes through.
And this is where you got to start looking at all the copy posters I'm sure Wuri is putting in the chat, right? Where he's just touting up and hyping up Ryoma. Going to be playing this Rise into the LeBlanc, which has been the counter pick of choice that we've seen quite often. Yeah, is that him? He's gonna be honestly really exciting to see here. There's no way the Zoe ends up getting played, but this is a very similar composition the 100 Thieves played to their first game so far. A lot of DPS coming out at range from the backline, but it is potentially a little bit vulnerable to take over on the LeBlanc just because he has so much backline access on this champion.
And notice how 100 Thieves Academy, they instantly went for the Rise, not even waiting for the third pick of the draft, or even, you know, let alone the second phase, because since TSM Academy already had the setups of 1 magic damage in the mid lane, it was potential that maybe Hyper goes for a physical damage jungler, and then Hauntzer could have picked up the Rise. So the priority for locking down that mage for Ryoma was absolutely crucial, and they're going to go with Renekton once again for Hauntzer. This does mean that Hyper is going to have to wait for the second phase before he can lock in a jungler choice, but considering that Diana, Lee Sin, some of his go-to picks have already been taken off the table, Hyper can wait a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, and I do like this quite a bit as well, right? If you know that you're going to be playing the Nara into the Renekton, it becomes a much better pick, which is part of why I like the Irelia ban. I'm still scared of takeover on this LeBlanc, but it is going to be giving a situation where, in theory, you've got a good matchup top lane, you've got a good matchup in the mid lane, and now if you can protect your bottom lane a little bit and make sure that you can get support counter pick, you're going to be very happy with this draft overall, because so much of it hinges on how these early games are actually going to play out.
TSM Academy, knowing that despite the loss, Poom was very powerful on the Braum, and it led to a lot of the small advantages that 100 Thieves Academy found in the early game between him and Luger. So trying to get Poom off of that pick. And 100 Thieves Academy are trying to thin down Hyper's champion pool at the moment. Nidalee Renekton is a very potent combo, and one of the things that you talk about, Josh, is that Gnar typically has a very nice laning phase against the Renekton, can always keep him out of arm's range. However, if you pair it up with something that can dive Gnar early on, then he's not going to have a fun time, and trying to limit those picks is on the priority list for 100 Thieves Academy.
I'm actually curious how TSM are going to try and punish this Gnar now, right? Because it is a thing where if you dive it really aggressively, Graves is going to be coming through. Okay, all right, we'll talk about Gnar a little bit more once we actually into the game, because it looks like you want to talk about this G-Raves.
I mean, the Graves, a.k.a. Greg, or Groove, says he is one of Chad's go-to picks that we have seen coming out from the EGL Summer Showdown, as when Chad was finding his form. It's not the Kha'Zix, but the Graves was something that he found a lot of success on, especially in their series against Evil Genius's Prodigies 4, that third place decider that gave them the final seed to lock in and bypassing the Unified Grand Prix that just happened this past month in August. So 100 Thieves Academy, this is a comfort pick for Chad. It doesn't give him as nearly as much agency in terms of ganking strength like the Volibear or the Jarvan that Hyper is locked in, but it is a scaling threat. And especially if you've seen the Twitter videos, you know, where the Eclipse of the Gale Force, Graves just one-shotting people, that is something that Chad can do if he is given enough time to scale.
think the Bob Chin video might be my favorite one, where
Yes.
Graves just like ease in, auto attacks once, and somebody just dies, right, from full HP. So it's something that is unlikely to happen in this game, but it is, you know, still a possibility on the horizon because there's a lot of squishy members actually on both sides of the field, right? LeBlanc, Ezreal, Rakan, even like the Gnar and Graves are fairly squishy, even with their itemization. If you can blow any of them up really quickly, you're just going to give your team this big lead. So I think we got a real fight on our hands between them this time around, and if Luger and Poom can have the same kind of early game success as we saw in Game 1, it could very easily tilt the 100 Thieves Academy.
I think the other thing to consider as well, Josh, is that because 100 Thieves Academy are taking a bit of a backstep in terms of their early game plan, since Graves, not necessarily the best on setting up ganks, he's more of a follow-upper, as he wants to go to lanes that have strong crowd control, whether it's an enhanced rune prison from Ryoma in the mid lane, or if you're going towards the bottom side of the lane, either pre-6 or post-6, because you'll have access to Zenith Blade and Shield of Daybreak from Poom before 6, and then after, Solar Flare and even Chain of Corruptions from Luger as well to lock down a very potentially slippery Rakan and Ezreal. But Chad wants to put priorities into farming up, whereas Hyper, he's the one that's playing Jarvan, and so instead of Diana, which is something that you want to farm a lot and try to just prioritize getting that first item power spike, which was the Proto Belt, Hyper doesn't care about hitting Gore Drinker anytime soon. He's more interested about setting up takeover to really just dominate the entire map.
I think it's interesting as well to pay attention to how Chad is choosing to spec himself this game, right? He is going with the Dark Harvest, you know, a rune choice that is very snowbally. If you start getting ahead, it becomes very easy to stay ahead. But it also doesn't give you the same kind of consistency as something like the Phase Rush or the Fleet Footwork would give you otherwise. And, you know, a smart play coming in from Gamsu right now to double check that bush. But it is Chad showing that he wants to be that Chad. He wants to be really, really aggressive. And we might be seeing another late invade come out from 100 Thieves. You know, Gamsu can't get over this wall without getting spotted, but Chad potentially can, and oh my gosh, looping around.
Hauntzer,
okay, he's not going to follow them.
Yeah, Hauntzer not only dodged out on a potential cheese from Gamsu and Chad, but also because of the ward that he put on while he looped around originally. 100 Thieves, or TSM Academy, are fully aware that this invade has happened, so now Hyper can plan to path and potentially go for just a vertical map. Or vertical jungling, I should say. Because now Hyper can take this blue buff and the Gromp. He's going to get level 3. And depending on where Luger and Poom are, they could potentially be either Dovin or ganked, or because they're playing away from Jad right now.
But they're also moving over. They want to try and contest this. It's very hard up against Hyper's Smite, and they are going to be able to pick it up, but it is a situation where they make sure that they aren't at risk of getting dove immediately. And we have to note that both junglers, despite the fact that they're going for this vertical, it's entirely known where everybody has gone. They know that Jarvan isn't here anymore. They know that he's gone buff to buff and has gone back into his own jungle because he's spotted going to the Raptors as well. So Graves, you know, farms a little bit faster, and he will have an opportunity to build up a bit of a camp lead since he can clear out both the western quadrant of the jungle, also the northern quadrant, whereas Jarvan is going to have to waste a lot of time going buff to buff and back into the opposing jungle.
Yeah, quick thinking from Luger and Poom, as if they had just let the wave casually build up, that could have been quite disastrous, but because they forced away Hyper from being able to safely get both blue buff and Grump, he had to retreat into his own jungle to be picking up his Raptor camp and his Krugs, so he's not here for the crash. He'll still be able to control the bottom half of the map and look for the crab, but in terms of making a dive play, things are not quite on sync between Yerson and Cody-san.
And again, we're going to start seeing the Graves starting to out-farm the Jarvan, right? It does mean the Hyper can go back into the jungle. They don't know that Graves is topside, but they have a pretty good idea, and now as they are going to spot him out with Hauntzer, he knows he can go over here while he has a bit of an advantage.
Wow.
This is a surprising teleport.
Okay, and they're pressing the go button. Poom flashing forward means that Hyper's flash has to be exchanged as well as Ryoma. They get a recall in, picks up the tier, and teleports in, and it's a short distance away from mid lane, so he doesn't lose out on much for that play either.
Ultimately, it's mostly just like saving Chad's jungle, and ooh, good heal from Luger, good movement.
What? Wow, quick thinking, and this might be first blood once again for 100 Thieves Academy. Your son does pop the flash and gets out of harm's way, but the heal being popped just to give the movement speed to step out of the grand entrance, absolutely really cool stuff here.
Really impressed with the movement coming through, but I don't know how valuable it actually was, because Cody Sun still has both of his summoner spells, whereas there are none left on the members of 100 Thieves bottom lane. And so Chad moving down might get spotted, and it looks like he is going to be spotted out by either a ward or scuttle crab as Luger just keeps fighting.
Luger and Poom just constantly looking to establish and assert dominance in this laning phase, despite being down all of their summoner spells, whereas Cody Sun had both Flash and Cleanse, had to burn the Cleanse just to basically respect the amount of potential lethality that was coming out from this bottom lane. And Luger has a pretty nice setup of a freeze coming in right now, whereas Chad dealing away some chicken nuggets as well.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we're seeing that 100 Thieves are still coming out of the early game with a small advantage on their jungler, right? We saw Chad have a big lead last time. This time, just a small farm lead, but we are also not seeing him start up the dragon nearly as early. And hey, we were going to ask, how are they going to be punishing the Gnar? The answer is you just send 3 people.
Chains miss from Takeover, but it forces the hop out of Gamsu, and that's already a lot of his survivability gone and used. And we didn't see this, Josh, but there was a flash burned from Gamsu at some point earlier on into the game. I wonder if Hauntzer had threatened lethal, or if there's someone else that came in while all the action was occurring on the bottom side of the map. As now Gamsu, thankfully, no dive will be coming in for him just now, but...
Yeah, look at this. Ryoma coming around, looking for a potential dive of his own, and Poom just goes in.
No cleanse from Cody Sun. He still has flash if he needs it, but that's a little too far forward from Poom. Ryoma wasn't quite ready in position to follow up on the damage, and that's first blood going over to Cody.
Okay, well, that was an interesting sequence of events, right? Poom going very, very far forward in order to try and force the play. They felt like they were falling behind, and ultimately it just gives a pretty big reward over. And as we take a look at the cinematic, I mean, you'll have to notice just how far away Ryze is when this actually comes through. He dives through and gets knocked up, and notice that neither Ryze nor Varus have even contributed to the fight at this point. At the very end, you see a Q coming out from Ryze, but that's it, right? It's just a situation where they weren't quite on the same page, they weren't synced up, and skipping steps, once again coming out for 100 Thieves, is going to put them a little bit behind.
Ryoma has to stay on this side of the map as he already roamed down and doesn't want to fall behind in terms of CS. Luger gets the recall in, starts walking mid lane to catch this wave. And this does set up 100 Thieves Academy to potentially start up the dragon, as Chad is already working on it at the moment. Gamsu has teleport available over Hauntzer. Make sure that he can at least respond in case there is a fight going over. But at this point, I think the rest of TSM Academy, they're more interested in potentially setting up another dive because Yurson is already committed to the top side of the map. Hyper is here as well.
There's a bar.
Gamsu is mega. And this is one of the few times where you don't want to necessarily dive the Gnar. You want to wait this one out because things could go awry, and they will pay respect to Gamsu.
Okay, yeah, I mean, they didn't call out that Gamsu didn't have ult. I think this dive was very doable, but it's not worth going for when you know that you are still coming out with advantages on the entire map anyway. The only place where they're currently behind is the jungle, and Jarvan has got guaranteed usefulness with Cataclysm a little bit later on. So, they just need to calm down. They know that they're going to be in a strong position in about 10 minutes, but on the top side, we got to fight.
Gamsu doesn't have flash still, and he's not mega, and he's very squishy as Mini-Gnar, and it's just an easy solo kill for Hauntzer.
That looked like the fight that Gamsu wanted, and I mean, this is a good matchup for Gnar, but it's definitely something that Hauntzer has been playing really, really well, and he's going to reward himself with not just the solo kill, but he's also going to be getting another plate at this point. It just feels like 100 Thieves Academy's top side is falling apart a little bit faster than we were expecting it to, and the only thing that they're getting in response is these neutral objectives like we saw in Game 1.
Hauntzer not only picks up the solo kill, but also gets 2 plates. I'm curious to see where in the gold state that puts him, as Ryoma starts trading against Takeover, suffers about half of his HP bar as he's trying to get and force this wave out ASAP and trying to gain wave priority, as Chad is trying to do so stealthily, take out the Rift Herald right now.
Should be able to pick it up at this point. Okay, he does have it. I was just expecting to see like the thing come up on the screen, but he does have it in his inventory, and he's still a little bit ahead of Hyper in terms of the farming, right? But it does need to translate. He is going with the lethality build with the Dark Harvest. He wants to try and find things relatively soon while he's at his strongest, and I think that TSM Academy, if they continue playing the way they have been, aren't necessarily going to be giving him a whole lot of windows to actually be particularly aggressive. They have control of the top side, they have more control of the bottom side this game than we saw in game 1, but it's still potentially the only avenue that they have in order to get Chad really skyrocketing into this game.
Yeah, team fights are going to have to be thought out well in advance for 100 Thieves Academy on who wants to engage and how they plan to get the majority of their burst damage down, because apart from collateral damage, Chad's a majority of the burst damage is also coming from end of the line. But as I discovered recently, Josh, in some of our Rec League games, if Jarvan throws down Cataclysm and you try to throw an end of the line outside of the Cataclysm, you don't do anything because it just hits the wall and you feel really sad and half of your burst damage is gone. So hopefully for him, Chad is in the pit, able to get a majority of the burst damage down on whoever is in trying to fight to the death rather than outside. And for 100 Thieves Academy, the next objective on the table, as they have been a team that has been focusing it more so than TSM have in the early parts of the game, will be coming up in about a minute 50. And with the way that these item completions have been coming in, I suspect that most of these 100 Thieves Academy members should be able to finish their second items. But Ryoma is going to get ganked by Hyper. Takeover expends a majority of his health pool to make sure that they can set up the play for it. It's not in time for the second dragon to spawn yet, but still, TSM Academy making great reactions.
They're going to be able to get a couple plates. Another Chain of Corruption goes wide, and Hyper now running down. I don't know how good this is going to be for 100 Thieves.
Hyper still has Cataclysm available, gets the flag and drag knockup onto Poom, but they're taking a lot of burst damage. He gets killed in midair, and now the follow-up from Chad and Solar Flare from Poom. They annihilate Yurson. Flash Shield of Daybreak comes out, tries to get enough damage onto Cody's son, but it's not going to be enough. He will stay alive, but this can buy 100 Thieves Academy time to look for first brick.
And this is another situation where we're seeing 100 Thieves actually playing the team fights out a little bit more cleanly than TSM Academy. And now Takeover coming around the side. They might have just stuck around too long.
Flash Distortion Chain does connect, but doesn't get the second pop of it. Oh,
they got him!
Collateral damage and Piercing Arrow. Duo combination from Chad and Luger takes down Takeover.
Alright, so 100 Thieves are really starting to come back based off of just their ability to play these skirmishes out a little bit more effectively. And ultimately, all of the leads that we saw TSM picked up at the beginning of the game are kind of gone at this point. Now, as we're back to even, all the Rift Herald crashes that we saw getting 4 plates off of the bottom lane turret, as well as the fact that this dragon is going to be coming up while 100 Thieves already has their mythic completed onto Chad Jungle, is going to give them a lot of opportunities to try and pick this up very quickly and continue their dragon stacking.
Note here that Cataclysm is not available for the time it being. Neither is collateral damage, but for TSM Academy, the terrain is so important to be able to isolate targets, and we got a chance to look at all the action that just unfolded.
I feel like this is kind of becoming a theme for this series, right? Like, Hyper actually ends up dying in the middle of his ultimate once again, as they just go really far forward. He's in the air when he goes down to Poom, and after that, Chad, he's just so strong at this point in the game. He doesn't have the full completed item at this point, but he doesn't need it. He's just looking to get all these Dark Harvest stacks, get himself rolling, and they pick up another play. And unfortunately, Takeover just not able to do anything about that. Tries to find the assassination onto Luger, but just doesn't have the damage yet.
A smoke screen also forces Takeover out of the original distortion plays. Can't stay long enough for the second part of the damage, the chains to connect. And the return of fire from collateral damage Piercing Arrow is nutty. And Gamsu, in Mega form, trading against Hauntzer. The second dragon is being taken by Chad on the other side of the map, as Hyper and Yurson might look to Bean Boozle them at the moment. Yurson popping the quickness, gets finally in range with the grand entrance. Flag and drag lands onto Chad. Doesn't have flash from before, but he's just too damn tanky. Hyper doesn't have enough damage and follow-up to be able to take him down.
Again, it feels like 100 Thieves, like that was not a great setup from 100 Thieves at the beginning. They were kind of spread out and caught out, and Ryoma ends up going down. But they're focusing their fire really well on the right targets, and now that they have 2 dragons, they're in a spot where they're going to become really scary, and Gamsu has had time top lane. He's gotten 2 plates for himself now. He's kind of catching back up a little bit, but he does need to make sure that he doesn't end up going down here.
Hauntzer did burn Teleport and Dominus, so Gamsu is about to go Mega. I don't imagine Gamsu dies here, although he is getting somewhat low, but being able to catch back up thanks to the plays that 100 Thieves Academy made on the other side of the map. Hauntzer, though, looks like because 100 Thieves weren't able to pick up first brick in that bottom lane push, it's going to be TSM Academies to pick up this time around. Oh, that's a lot of... Whoa!
He's gone. That's a lot of damage coming through. Might start getting close to the spot of that Bob Chain clip, right? Just a 1 auto attack is all you need. I have to imagine Collector is going to be the next item coming out from Chad Jungle. Maybe something like an Umbral Glaive, but it is such a dangerous position for the squishy members of TSM Academy to be going anywhere where they don't have vision. And the LeBlanc that we were saying is going to be a big part of TSM Academy's victory, suddenly not going to be particularly strong. We'll take a look at this last fight once again, and good job from Chad to pick it up relatively cleanly. And then as they try and leave, you notice that they're all spread out, but you see TSM divert into 2 separate fights. They end up not taking down Chad, and they get Ryoma instead, and I feel like it's possible they could have just dove into the bottom side of the fight a little bit more aggressively and find their kills there instead of just picking up the one Ryze, who's not worth quite as much at this point of the game.
We'll split in the call potentially for TSM Academy and 100 Thieves. I mean, I was just caught off guard that Chad was able to just solo out Takeover, man. I'm still trying to struggle believe that actually happened, because obviously Takeover didn't believe that Chad was going to have enough damage to take him down either.
I mean, that's the thing. You got to make sure that you think you're strong, and as you think you're strong, you're typically going to be strong, right? Gamsu, not quite going to get into a fight just quite yet with Hauntzer, but he's got a lot of friends coming.
There's no flash from Hauntzer either. Solar Flare, Shield of Daybreak, all the stun, all the CCs throwing into the wall, and this Crocodile is going down, and that's shut down gold. Going over to Chad as well. Luger gets picked up by Cody Sun in the backfire, though. Chad has the flash out of the Cataclysm Pit, but Hyper is now on the run, and he gets sold out by Gamsu, who's able to hop over the back end of the wall. Cody Sun and Yurson still on the backside, trying to see if they can get some damage down, but the rest of 100 Thieves Academy, they're doing so damn well. They're strong enough to be able to take down this Rift Herald and walk away safely.
Okay, we got a real game on our hands at this point, Mark. We're starting to see 100 Thieves with a small lead as we get past the 16-minute mark. They are winning all of the neutral objectives. They have a small gold lead and 2 turrets ahead, but this game can also pivot very, very quickly based on the way that TSM's draft has gone. If LeBlanc starts to pick up a couple of kills in a row, suddenly there's a lot of threats. Suddenly, Luger, Chad, and Ryoma have to be very careful with how they're positioning during these fights, and I still think that TSM Academy have ways back into this. It's just become a lot harder.
3,000 gold down. It's not necessarily the end of the world for TSM Academy, and the how should I say this? The round that they want to take is trying to still find a way to get Takeover online, because he hasn't had necessarily the best of success. But looking at this fight here, when Hauntzer, one of your primary players to really get fed, gets routed off, as we might just have another fight here. Gamsu pinching out Hauntzer once again. The Gore Drinker and the Cold Meek, not going to be enough sustain to keep him alive.
Got found out again, but it is traded for a turret on the top half, and Hauntzer will be alive and potentially have a teleport available for the upcoming dragon fight. Typically, what we see at this point in the game, and the general trade you're going to make, is you're going to have these 2 dragons for 100 Thieves in exchange for gold. Like, the other team typically gets Rift Heralds and takes turrets with them, but that's not the case right now. 100 Thieves are getting everything on the map. They don't have to worry about the trade that's coming through, because they have the gold lead as we start looking at this 3rd dragon, and we might be marching very quickly towards a Mountain Soul for 100 Thieves, which will again make TSM's life so difficult because they're so reliant on trying to burst people out with LeBlanc and Jarvan.
And one of the other things to note here as well, Josh, when Mountain Soul starts stacking, you're not only going to have the HP shield if you claim the soul point, but even just one Mountain Dragon gives you bonus resistances on On a champion that Chad is piloting in this Graves, he's already stacking a lot of armor, and the only person that can threaten him is Takeover, but because he's not been able to have successful one-on-ones with him, there's not necessarily anyone that can effectively take him out. Hyper tries to go for the steal. He locks him into the Cataclysm, but Chad is still able to kite his way out. But finally, for TSM Academy, they dedicate enough resources, enough divers to be able to take out Chad into the backline, and the shutdown goes over to Hauntzer. But for Ryoma, maybe he can find something around, but still, Hauntzer, now that Chad is no longer alive, he's able to sustain himself through the fight. 100 Thieves Academy now on the run. TSM Academy are not going to take any more for the troubles.
Very chaotic fights coming through in this game, Mark. We're seeing so many players move in and out of the fights. There's a lot of mobility, there's a lot of damage, and there's a lot of range from both teams. And this time, TSM are able to find a little bit better of a fight. Unfortunately, losing this Mountain Drake does put them in a very dangerous spot where they now have to contest every upcoming dragon. 4 minutes from now and every 5 minutes after that, you're going to have to see TSM come for this dragon. And 100 Thieves can use that. They want the Mountain Soul, don't get me wrong, but they don't need it, right? They can trade the time that TSM are going for it for the Baron. They can do what we do in all of our Rec League games. We're like, oh yeah, we don't need this dragon, let's just go hit mid lane, right? There's a lot of ways that 100 Thieves have put themselves up for success, and I have to imagine they're going to be able to carry it out here to the end.
Now, 100 Thieves Academy, let's see how well they're able to construct plans now that they have this threat of Mountain Soul on their side, because like you said, if you force TSM Academy in a spot where they are saying, listen guys, we have to get this, we have to deny the next Mountain Dragon away, otherwise Soul is almost damning for the rest of our composition that relies on Burst to try and basically assassinate these squishies from 100 Thieves Academy. But then 100 Thieves get to say, okay, well, yeah, you get the dragon, but we're going to start taking turrets. But in this fight, getting the shutdown on Chad is absolutely crucial for TSM Academy.
And we also see that how aggressively Luger was able to play during that fight. He actually almost 100-0 takeover off on the opposite side of the fight, and it gives 100 Thieves a lot of freedom because they don't have a LeBlanc trying to run them down throughout the fight. But now, again, another chaotic fight starting. There's no battle lines.
Big pinch, but Ryoma comes in with the Realm Warp. Teleport coming in from Gamsu as well. Chain of Corruptions will lock down Hauntzer in the fight, taking very low, and Chad gets the execute thanks to that Collector, but he gets knocked up by the Grand Entrance, but it doesn't even matter because he takes out Hyper as well! Holy camole! 100 Thieves Academy doing so much damage. Gamsu, we're not going to look at that one. We're just going to pretend that didn't happen. It's okay. TSM Academy already losing 3 members, though. True Shot Barrage from Cody Sun. He's going to be the difference maker. Can he get into this pit? Try and stop 100 Thieves Academy from taking the Baron safely. Yurson doesn't have quickness anymore, but has a Grand Entrance. Members are super low for 100 Thieves Academy. It's up to Chad to see if he can secure the Baron. He has Smite available, but it's a lot of poke damage coming on from Cody Sun. Poom is going to be able to play goalkeeper, though, and keeps Cody and Yurson out of the pit. And Cody Sun and Yurson still trying to flash forward, looking for the Arcane Shift and get the damage down. Poom might have to be the sacrificial lamb, but the rest of 100 Thieves Academy will be able to get out alive, and Poom doesn't even go down. Josh, TSM Academy lose 3 and get nothing back.
Absolutely nothing. This is huge, right? This is the complete reverse. 100 Thieves, they sold enough hoodies now that they have a gold lead as well, right? They're just able to win everything across the board. They're winning the team fights, they're winning the objectives, they're winning the turrets. They haven't given up anything really at this point, and we're seeing that Takeover's LeBlanc has been managed. Hauntzer's Renekton has been managed, right? You're able to lock them down with all of these arcs of fire all at the same time, and they aren't able to run Rampage in this game like they were in the previous one. 100 Thieves, they're well ahead of the curve right now. They're already in a spot where they can start contesting some of these choke points and also make sure that their side waves are ready for these upcoming fights. This is going to be TSM's last hurrah, probably. They need to find a win here. They need to get the dragon, otherwise 100 Thieves should have a lock on the game.
Look at the wave states right now. Ryoma currently pushing out that top side of the map. This wave is going to be crashing in. He has the Baron buff available. He's not showing himself at the moment because he wants to keep TSM on their toes. He doesn't want to overexpose himself too hard. Picks up a Grom for his troubles as well, but now he is hitting the second tier turret and forcing TSM Academy in a spot. Do you want to stop me from being able to push, or do you want to make a play mid lane? As they're going to go for the pick onto Poom. Forces the teleport out of Ryoma, but that wave might be strong enough to still take down the turret even without his presence. We're going to have to see if TSM Academy are going to even try to respond because they're losing waves on the top side of the map right now.
It's also important for 100 Thieves Academy that Gamsu is going to be able to build a bar for this fight. Mini Gnar nowhere near as effective as Mega Gnar for all of these team fights, and if he doesn't start stacking relatively soon, it's going to take him a little while to actually build it up for the team fight, and that is, you know, it's not a great window, but it is a window for TSM to try and come back in. And hey, they're not even going for the dragon, they're just using the pressure to go mid lane. TSM, can they find something?
A Cataclysm lands on a Luger.
Oh, God.
Bean Boozled, baby. The 100 Thieves Academy say, nope, not today, TSM Academy. This is the day you almost captured Jack Sparrow for 100 Thieves Academy, and they pick up Mount Soul as well.
Yeah, there's got to be a captain though in there somewhere, right? Captain Ryoma taking them all out to the dragon. That was great, right? Like, you have to try and find some engagement, but unfortunately, you gotta crowd control the rise. It's not enough to lock Luger into a cage if they're just going to be leaving in just a second. So 100 Thieves now have everything they could possibly want. The Baron's about to run out, but now they have so much control. You see the extra shield starting to come through, a ton of extra resistances, so it becomes incredibly difficult for anybody on 100 Thieves to die.
And you know the next Warrior copy pasta has got to be about that Realm Warp, dude. That was...
you know it.
We're given new material. Chad taking the red buff right in the face of TSM Academy. He doesn't care. He's able to get out scot-free. Baron buff has expired for the time being, but Mountain Soul being acquired by 100 Thieves now not only makes them more durable than ever, but also giving them that extra HP shield. It means the burst damage coming out for TSM Academy, it was already starting to falter a little bit, and now it's going to be even more mitigated.
You also have to start killing pen items now that you wouldn't necessarily normally have to do, because everybody just has a bunch of extra resistances, right? The Void Staff becomes much more valuable. You know, the Serilda's Grudge, which is typically something that Ezreal's will build anyway, is currently being diverted because Cody Sun is going for a different item. Oh, Yurson.
They look for the... Oh my goodness. Well, good night, Yurson. And the rest of 100 Thieves Academy, they're going to try to force a fight outside of the base of TSM Academy. Yurson just got popped. Collateral damage was used, as well as Chain of Corruptions. A lot of ultimate abilities expended by 100 Thieves Academy to make that pick work, but it does buy them time to knock out the second-tier turret on the top side of the map, expending or accelerating their gold even further. And now we are looking at an 8,000 gold difference at 26 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to take a small moment here to nitpick, right? Because I was looking at Cody Sun's itemization. He's building towards a Frozen Heart, which normally I think is a great item in an Israel, right? There are 2 80 carries plus a Gnar on the other side that you have to deal with in order to actually survive, right? And Frozen Heart does a great job of that, slowing their attack speed and also reducing the amount of damage you take per auto attack. But unfortunately for him, he is the primary damage threat for this team right now. Frozen Heart doesn't increase your damage nearly as much as something like a Serilda's Grudge would, or even like the Tiamat Ravenous Hydra builds, or just something that does a lot more direct damage. And I worry that now that TSM are behind, building defensively actually doesn't help you, because you need to have the damage to actually kill them. It doesn't matter if it takes you an extra 2 seconds to die if you never were a threat in the first place.
It's always the conversation that's super difficult to have. If you're the team that's ahead, then it definitely makes sense that you want to build more defensively, because it protects your bounty and it protects the lead that you've already built up. Whereas if you're the team behind, building defensively doesn't do jack sometimes, Josh, because you got to build damage first in order to kill them in the first place.
Exactly. It's a classic LPL thing. So we'll see how effectively TSM are actually able to find these fights coming up, right? I mean, the Warden's Mill doesn't do a whole lot for him. He really needs to complete the Frozen Heart to even get the same kind of damage upgrade as you would see, because it, you know, mana is converted into AD via the Muramana, but it is a situation where it's going to take a little bit of time. Gnar now in the bottom lane has finally at a spot where he can probably start winning these fights up against Hauntzer's Renekton.
Oh. Okay, well, Chain of Corruptions was just burned. This might be an opportunity for Hyper to look for something. Chad and Poom both get knocked up, and they're just going to try to stick on the routing off Poom, but now the teleport is coming in from Gamsu, has a full Mega Bar, looking to isolate takeover from the rest of the fight. 100 Thieves Academy trying to take it against Hauntzer. They pop the Stairx Gauge. Gamsu is now in the back line and throws 2 up against the wall for Ryoma. Just pound out damage with the overload, forcing the flash out of Hyper. He's able to get out, but can't say the same about Yurson, who falls. Chad flashing over the wall, looking for more. The smoke screen kills him, thanks to the Collector execute. They take down the Crocodile as well.
And what we were saying, they are just too low on damage right now. Nobody's actually a real threat to anybody on the side of 100 Thieves. Takeover, you know, he was trying to tussle with Gamsu's Gnar, wasn't doing any real damage. We saw that Ezreal wasn't able to get any real damage across him. Hauntzer, because he's gone with the Sterix and the Guardian Angel, sure, he's going to stay alive for a long time, but you're not going to be able to kill any of these members through the Mountain Soul Shield. So 100 Thieves just come out ahead. They take this fight really long, and yeah, TSM, they survived a little longer, but they didn't get any kills.
And I want to take a moment to start talking about Chad, because game 1 on the Volibear, he kind of was trying to be the facilitator for the team as they try to make adaptations in the early game to start accelerating Luger and Poom on the Volibear. This time around, he goes to a comfort pick in the Graves, and normally this is a pick that we've actually known Kenvi for in the past. If you remember his upbringing in the 100 Thieves Next roster, the main champions that he was known for, the Kindred, the Nidalee, and the Graves. And something about 100 Thieves junglers, man, just being able to take the carry reins, being able to take a little bit more resource-intensive roles in the composition. Chad was someone that was brought in for the summer split because their option for the spring split didn't really work out that well for 100 Thieves Next, but his time on 100 Thieves Next during the summer granted them the 3rd place finish in the EGL Summer Showdown, giving them this far, and now Chad has been absolutely doing work in this game too for 100 Thieves Academy off of the promotion.
Yeah, I also want to take a brief moment to talk about how 100 Thieves plays around this Elder Dragon. They don't actually want to coin flip this dragon. They don't want to jeopardize their chances of actually winning. They don't need to just hit it, because normally when people do this, there's inhibitors already down. 100 Thieves want the fight around the Elder Dragon. They cannot afford to coin flip this game, because that is TSM Academy's only way back
they're
in.
getting really close though. 3,000 on the clock. Hyper goes in for the
Oh,
steal.
they
He
get it!
gets
No!
Oh no, this could be disastrous for 100 Thieves Academy. They've got to be really careful about how the damage comes in from the rest of TSM. Cody's son has already eliminated Poom, but they've traded on to Hyper, they've traded on to Cody, and they're going to be able to isolate Hauntzer, Takeover, and Yurson, the only members left with the Elder Dragon buff. It might not be enough to stop 100 Thieves Academy, but still, I mean, maybe that flip didn't need to necessarily happen in the first place, but 100 Thieves Academy, they have a numbers advantage, and now Takeover has to perform a miracle if he can stop this.
Okay, well, we still have 15 seconds left before Hyper's back up. They need to find a fight right now. TSM, I mean, he's poking, but he needs to be able to clear the wave as well. And TSM, they're just so far behind, they can't even do that.
12,000 gold down. Not even Elder Dragon stolen by Hyper is going to be enough to bring them back from the brink. And 100 Thieves Academy are sending us the distance as they take game 2 and send us to a game 3.
Okay, wow, I was expecting that this was probably going to be our more competitive series of the day. I was not expecting it to look like it has so far. 100 Thieves TSM going to be taking us the distance, and while it was a surprising situation where the dragon ends up going over to TSM, as we saw, it just wasn't enough. 100 Thieves just too far ahead at that point, able to clean up the rest of the fight and clean up the rest of the game.
And especially after such a high-octane Game 2 from 100 Thieves Academy, for me and Josh, we need to take a moment to catch our breath. I'm sure everyone else at home would love a chance to catch their breath and recharge their batteries a little bit. We're going to be taking a quick break, but when we return, it will be Game 3 and a decider between 100 Thieves Academy and TSM Academy.